You've heard it on our show today. Multiple stories on aviation disasters around the world, including one here in Canada. South Korea seeing one of the country's worst aviation disasters. In Kazakhstan, an Azerbaijan Airlines plane was shut down allegedly by Russia. Hassan Shahidi, president and CEO of the Flight Safety Foundation, joins us now to discuss this further. Welcome back, Hassan.
Good to see you.
Let's start with Halifax. Part of an Air Canada flight caught fire, evacuating the plane and closing down the airport for about 90 minutes.
All right, now another news coming is from the aviation sector, where Air Canada flight 2259 made a dramatic landing at the Halifax Sandfield International Airport in Canada. The incident was reported on the night of 28th of December after a broken landing gear caused the wing to scrape the runway, igniting a fire.
Many uncertainties, as you can imagine, still surround what sadly the deadliest aircraft in an aircraft crash in South Korea. I know you've been studying the footage for us, having a look at it all day for us. What are your assessment at this hour?
Well, I'm pretty shocked actually, because whatever happened to the airplane, which meant that the pilot couldn't get the flaps and gear down for the landing, was not actually what caused the death of the passengers. The Transport Minister is quite right. The runway didn't cause this accident. Something happened to the airplane, it disabled it. I think it lost hydraulics. They couldn't get the gear down, overran the runway. It's the wall at the end.
After 3 days of silence, Russian President Vladimir Putin today apologized to Azerbaijan for the Christmas Day crash of a passenger jet over Russian airspace.
Emergency officials in South Korea are now confirming that only 2 of the 181 people on board survived a plane crash. That plane skidded off the runway, crashed, and burst into flames.
Families of passengers on board the plane listened as public health officials read the names of the identified victims in the crash. Loved ones are now demanding answers as to what caused this devastating incident.
This crash happened just after 9 a.m. local time there. You can see where that airport is in the southern part of the country. The flight originated in Bangkok.
Part of an Air Canada flight caught fire, evacuating the plane and closing down the airport for about 90 minutes. What are your thoughts on this?
The aircraft skidded down the runway and part of it caught fire. A passenger on board described the event and said that the plane started to tilt to the left, and as that happened, we heard a loud noise, almost like a crash, as the wing scraped along the pavement. The airline issued a statement and said that the passengers did not seem to suffer any life-threatening injuries, but were quite shaken up.
Well, it looks like this was a de Havilland aircraft that had issues with one of its landing gears. It landed and the aircraft caught fire, but thankfully there were no injuries. At this point, the investigators will be looking at to what exactly happened with this flight, and in particular looking into the landing gear failure. The data will be collected and they'll be looking at the evidence and will determine what exactly happened.
Is this a likely malfunction?
At this point, the investigation is ongoing. It is not clear exactly why the landing gear failed. They'll be looking at the information, the data, and the maintenance history on this aircraft, and will determine the likely cause.
To South Korea now, 179 people are dead after a plane crashed while attempting to land.
And that's what a lot of people are saying. They can't understand why this airplane was landed on that runway at that speed with no flaps, with no gear. There might have been something else involved, but a bird strike on an engine might shut an engine down, but there's so many redundant systems there, it just doesn't make sense. So we're in the dark here, but we know this. The runway is 9,200 feet. It's a very long runway. It did come in hot and high, hot and fast. We don't know why that was. The real issue, that airplane was probably damaged more than we think. And it may not have been just the bird strike. There might have been other things that happened to that airplane. We don't know, but it's very strange to have that airplane land that hot on a runway that's 9,200 feet to the point where it literally was still going pretty strong when it hit that wall.
But it's your understanding that they didn't at all. They had two engine failures, potentially due to bird strike, and then attempted the landing.
Yes, that's correct.
And so there's some speculation that the landing gear may have malfunctioned as well. But in your view, is this just everything happening too quickly for the pilots to react, or how could this have happened?
Well, one of the other critical factors here, Nick, is that the air traffic control data that's sent from the aircraft, it's called ADS-B. It's the thing that everybody watches on flight radar. All that data ends up on flight radar and you can see where aircraft are. That was turned off at 900 feet just after the bird strike. Now, when I say turned off, it ceased transmission. So that indicates there were possible multiple electrical failures resulting from this multiple bird strike. So therefore, the pilots were possibly dealing with a cascading series of electrical failures, possibly hydraulic failures. They may not have had a chance if they had a problem with the undercarriage to crank it down, because if they had a dual engine failure, then they would have simply obviously had to land as best they can.
In Kazakhstan, an Azerbaijan Airlines plane was shot down, killing 38 people. The plane repeatedly tried to make its landing before it diverted and crashed in the country. Russian air defenses were operating in the area. What are the protocols regarding civilian aircrafts near a combat zone?
As investigators comb through the crash site where the passenger plane went down, a stunning statement from the Kremlin today. Russian President Vladimir Putin apologizing, but not taking responsibility for the crash. He says, in the left arm, I don't know what touched me. I just looked and saw blood. But the conversation cut short. He says, I have to turn my phone off. They're not allowing me to speak. Several airlines, including those from Azerbaijan, Dubai, and Israel's main carrier El Al, have now suspended flights to Russia.
Stephanie, what is the deal with this?
Hey, Jackie. Yeah, a lot of questions, not too many answers at this point, but speculation is mounting as to what caused this crash in the first place. Now, that source telling Reuters that the plane's communications were paralyzed by electronic warfare systems on the approach into Grozny, but adds no one claims that it was done on purpose, all while Russia's aviation watchdog, they claimed that the plane diverted because of a bird strike.
Being struck by a bird could cause this much of a disaster?
Typically, no. This really happens rarely, this kind of a disaster. Bird strikes do happen around the world. And in particular, the investigators will be looking at as to why the aircraft landed without any landing gear.
Could have had a bird strike in the right engine. Could have had a bird strike in the cockpit window, which actually penetrated the window, even though I don't think the plane was flying fast enough for that to happen, which could account maybe for some cockpit confusion by the flight crew. But this is a bit of an enigma. We have to wait to see what all the data shows.